in to contact us on the studio line on 011-680-0355. And of course, you can also WhatsApp us on 061-766-0355. Our X handle is at Salam Media, with the hashtag, of course, being news and views. So I'm going to take you straight into our next interview. Today, we are having a conversation with Mr. Klaas Mokgomole, who is a former BDS boycott, divestment and sanctions activist. He is now doing other things. He's in a different space, ideologically speaking, and I will give him an opportunity to explain that. And we're just going to have a conversation around Mandela's legacy, and particularly on this perspective regarding the Gaza genocide. Welcome to Salam Media. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. So can you talk us through what are your perspectives on this issue?
In particular, which one? Because, we were told that we're going to talk about Rudin, we're going to talk about a couple of things. It's South African about our stance.
Okay. Well, I feel like all of these issues. Okay.
So which one we tackle.
All right. So I think it's all tied, because the issue of Rudin, for our listeners who are unaware, there was some might call it a spat between the principal of Rudin and also St. King David's, the school, which is obviously a school that is predominantly a Jewish school, where Rudin had taken a position that they would not, and this was based on pressure from its own constituents, learners and parents at the school, who did not feel comfortable with playing against King David. And the basis upon that is that many, many learners at King David are known to, even as they matriculate, to go and join the IDF. And currently the IDF is engaged in a genocide against Palestinians. So that, of course, has sparked a lot of debate, where some were saying that the Rudin principal, she has subsequently resigned, should perhaps not have gotten involved. It's a school, it's a neutral issue. But there are others who are arguing that when it comes to genocide, we cannot be neutral. So what are your views on that matter?
Look, let's start with the Rudin one before we actually deal with what's happening in the Middle East and what's happening with the conflict itself. So we know very well that as South Africans, obviously, we have a past of apartheid. So meaning we understand it very well. And since we understand it very well, it means that as South Africans, we are at a point where we know what it means to actually fight for freedom. And also, while we are fighting for freedom, we also understand the difference between liberation and violent extremism. So we know the difference, because as we've been through that, we knew we fought for freedom. And now when we experience something different, or when people somewhere else in the world experience something different, we'll be able to tell if they're really fighting for freedom or they're fighting for something that is very violent and is extremism. So schools are places where we allow people to actually have debates. They can have conversations, they can have discussions and stuff like that. In a space like high schools, obviously most of the learners are guided maybe by the school policies, are guided by whatever management says. Now we go to Rudin and King David. Rudin decided to pull out. If you listen to the voice note, or the voice recording, decided to pull out mainly because they received pressure from parents. The pressure from parents raising concerns that, no, we're playing against a Jewish school. And it's not just a Jewish school. I think they were basing concerns on the fact that they're playing against the Jewish school with assumptions that everyone in the Jewish school maybe supports Israel. Understand? So now they are saying, look, we need to sort of pull out. I think that's the pressure that they put on the principal. But obviously, now it didn't make sense, because when it comes to schools, we don't really involve politics. Because the moment you say, no, we're not going to play this school because of their stance on a certain country, there's a problem. That's why now the Jewish community is within their rights to say, look, this was an anti-Semitic move, because they actually said they don't want to play us because we're a Jewish school. They put it like that. We want to play us because we're a Jewish school, and now we're taking it further because it's an anti-Semitic act. So what should have happened at Rodin? The match should have continued. If there were learners that were not comfortable with playing the match, the learners should obviously submitted the concerns, and those learners, because in a tennis team, you have a couple of players, of course, and we see those who are not available, and then we put others forward to play. Because now another thing that we need to look at when it comes to Rodin, we check, was this act only put on King David, or they also exercise the same thing when they play other schools? Because there are a lot of schools. For example, we have a lot of Catholic schools in South Africa. The Saint and what. The Catholic schools, we know their stance when it comes to the LGBT community. So now question is, will Rodin take a similar stance when they're playing those schools? Because most of they're in the same region D, District D or D9 system, whatever, of leagues, whether they're playing hockey, netball, squash, and tennis. Same thing, we're looking at other Muslim schools on their stance. For example, Auckland Park Academy of Excellence, Johannesburg Muslim School, when we're looking at their stance on the issue that they're supporting Hamas, a well-known terrorist organization. We see what they do in their schools. There's the posters. When you go around, you see the flyers and stuff like that. The education, the stuff they have been taught. You can see that these schools actually are supporting it. Now, the question is, did Rodin only practice this when it comes to King David because of their stance? Or they also will do the same thing when it comes to these other schools that I've just mentioned and stuff like that? So I don't know. Should I jump into the?
Well, I think I'm hearing you. I'm not sure I agree, but I want to tie into, because anyway, we know what happened at Rodin. The principal has resigned, and it seems they've resolved it their own way. And there are some who might argue that a school has the right, by the way, to take a moral stance. And it seems that is what Rodin was attempting to do. Now, perhaps we may not agree. I see you bringing in the issue of LGBTQI, which to me is not actually the topic of the conversation, because here it had to do with the genocide in Gaza. But I want us to touch on what you said earlier. You said in South Africa, we know the difference between violent extremism and the fight for freedom. So how would you define our struggle against apartheid? Did you think that we sang our way to freedom?
No. So
what did we do?
Let's go back to what apartheid is. Simple definition. Apartheid was a system of laws, architectured system of
which
laws.
Which also exists in Israel against Palestinians. Yes.
System of laws, architectured to making sure that they're going to discriminate.
Right, which is what they do in Israel.
And so they did that. So when you go to the Middle East, Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East.
According to who?
According to the system of democracy.
A democracy that discriminates against Palestinians, where Palestinians do not have equal status of citizenship. So you are calling that a democracy?
Are you going to allow me to finish? Because if we're going to do this, we're not going to move, and I think we don't have time.
Continue.
Let me explain.
Let me withdraw. Yeah.
No, you don't withdraw. I love the fact that you are raising your points, but obviously we're having a conversation. Okay. So if you are going to interject, I'm going to allow you to speak.
Okay.
Then you'll finish the same way. I'll require you to do the same thing. Only democracy in the Middle East, and that democracy that allows Arabs and Jews to share spaces. When you go to the Israel parliament, the Knesset, we have representation of the Arabs in there. When you go to the clinics and the hospitals, the schools, the universities, Arabs and Jews are able to share in spaces. There's press freedom in Israel. You as a Palestinian, as an Arab, of course, as a Jew, you can practice your freedom. You can actually write an article against Netanyahu, or you can have a march, you can have a demonstration against the government, and nothing will happen to you. You're actually living free. So you are allowed to exercise. Arabs in Israel are allowed to actually have their views heard. They have rights. When you go back to South Africa and apartheid, we didn't have that as black people. Black people were segregated. We had our own different education system. There were acts of parliament that were enacted to making sure that blacks are sort of removed from the spaces, when it comes to education system, jobs, group areas act, a lot of things that will happen in South African apartheid. So we don't see that side. So obviously you brought that up, and there are a lot of things. I think I also wanted to touch on the issue of genocide, but let me allow you to speak on this one.
I do think that I'm going to disagree with you very strongly on the notion of democracy in Israel. It is a fact that in Israel we have a two-tier legal system, okay? And there is active state-sanctioned discrimination against Palestinians. We've had leaders of the Israeli cabinet describing Palestinians as human animals who should be eliminated. They use the language of genocide. And in fact, not only are they using the language of genocide, there is an actual active genocide happening right now against Palestinians, led by the war criminal Benjamin Netanyahu and his cabinet of evildoers. So the reality is that for you to come and look, this is why we love South Africa. Everybody has the right to free speech, but the reality is that I just think that we should not we should deviate from trying to promote propaganda, because there is no the democracy that you speak about in Israel is reserved in terms of rights, and full citizenship rights are reserved for Israeli citizens, and certainly not for the Palestinians that they are massacring on a daily basis as we speak.
Okay, let me jump in there.
And if I can also just add that in Israel, they're lucky enough to have clinics and universities, because they've gone and destroyed all the clinics and universities. They've actively targeted health workers, blown up hospitals as part of this genocide.
Thank you. Let me jump in there. I think you're what you're not doing, you're not being honest, maybe with your listeners and maybe your viewers. Let's not forget that in the Middle East, especially in that area, we have Israel. In Israel, we have almost 9 to 10 million, the population of 9 to 10 million. And in Israel, we have Arabs and Jews. Then we have the West Bank, and you have Gaza. So the moment you say Palestinians, of course, you're talking about maybe the West Bank, and you're talking about Gaza. Israel and the government of Israel is not responsible for those areas. When you go to Gaza, they had elections. Obviously, Israel withdrew from 2005. Then after that, there were elections, and Hamas won. And Hamas has been in charge of Gaza. Hamas has been in charge of that area for many, many years, and Israel was not interfering with that space. Then we move into the West Bank. We have your Palestinian Authority, obviously the PLO, that is in charge in the West Bank, and Israel is not in charge of that area. So the government of Israel is in charge of what's happening inside Israel. So now let's go back to, obviously, because I was still trying to make a point. Let's talk about what genocide is, because we just go out and use maybe terminologies without actually going back to defining what genocide is. I think we need to go back. It's a deliberate attempt to destroy a specific group of people based on, we can look at the elements of genocide based on 4 things: ethnicity, nationality, race, and religion. So now, if we go to 2003, October 7th, what Hamas did was to jump the fence of the border of Israel. They went in the south of Israel, and they went and massacred people. They massacred people, and that's the thing that you are missing. I don't know if you want to sit down and want to define genocide. We must go back to the massacred people. Let me finish.
Okay, please finish.
So they massacred people, and we're not even talking about that. Then after they massacre people, obviously go and hide, and they hide their ammunition in your hospitals, in your clinics, in your apartments and stuff like that. At least that is actually documented.
Documented by the Israeli propaganda machinery.
No, not even by that. So they documented. So now, as a government, as IDF,
because we all know that is Israeli propaganda.
When now the IDF and the IDF has to come and sort of save the civilians that were held hostage, they have to go, obviously, and enter Gaza. And unfortunately, and no one wants to see this, obviously, unfortunately, during a war, lives will be lost, and we don't want lives to be lost. We value life so much.
Okay,
so then we go to these spaces in the clinics, in the schools, and stuff like that. We saw that rockets were hidden there, ammunition were hidden there. They were hidden in under the tunnels, they were hidden in the apartments, they were hidden in the clinics and stuff like that. And this is not something. So anyone who wants to actually get this, they can actually fact check it. You can see it.
Fact check it using Israeli propaganda.
I don't think Israel controls so much.
We do have to wrap this up because unfortunately we've even gone over time. But I think we need to make this point. Yes. On the October 7th, according to the numbers, about 1,200 people were killed. So does it justify the mass murder of more than 50,000 children? So when Israel is defending itself in this war that you claim is a war, it targets children. It had to massacre 50,000 children to make up for the deaths of 1,200 adults. Is that what I'm understanding your logic to be around this? Secondly, I think we need to be absolutely clear that it is the apartheid that exists in Israel has been officially defined. It actually has the same characteristics as the apartheid that existed in South Africa, where you have a state-sanctioned battery of legislation that is designed to subjugate and undermine the rights of other human beings. Where even as we speak today, the Israeli government...
You're going to give me a chance to respond, right?
No, the Israeli government... You've spoken for a long time. You've spoken for a long time, Klaas, and I need to correct it. The very same fake democratic Israeli government that you're busy here celebrating, it actually controls the number of calories that Palestinians can consume per day. We had Palestinian activists, we had Israeli citizens blocking food trucks, food aid to Palestinians. I mean, if you don't believe any other media, even CNN covered this, BBC covered this, the fact that you had citizens who were blocking food aid whilst Palestinians were starving. We had Israel blowing up tents, children being set on fire. I mean, that is a genocide. So I'm going to give you've got literally 30 seconds to give us your, no. I had to counter some of the propaganda I was listening to here. You've got 30 seconds to wrap it up, my brother, and then we got to go to the ad break.
So, number one, you need to understand that Hamas started the whole thing. So Hamas went and attacked people in the south, and IDF and Israel government is within their rights to actually go and defend their people. Unfortunately, in wars, women and the vulnerable and the children end up being casualties. It's unfortunate, but there was not a target. They were not a target. Just to clarify you, this is what happens when there's a war. And another thing, don't forget that Hamas uses these people as human shields. That's why they send them forward during wars, and they're the ones that become casualties
and
in the end.
That is all the time we have, unfortunately. Once again, thank you for coming. At least we know, those of us who've been following this very clearly from day one, that unfortunately the things that you've just uttered are frankly, factually, completely incorrect. There are thousands of records from doctors and health workers who have actually testified in recognized institutions that Israel deliberately targets children with their snipers. They target them, they shoot at them in the head, they shoot at them in the heart. And as I said, you cannot possibly tell me that massacring 50,000 children in response to the deaths of 1,000 people is somehow justifiable.
So I'll let you speak.
I think we need to be very clear. But thank you for coming in.
So I'm saying I wish you had more time
to interview. To the ad break.
I wish you had more time.
Keep it locked on Salam Media. This is why we enjoy our democracy in South Africa. We do allow ourselves to give platforms to people, even when they spew false propaganda. We allow them to engage. So let's go to a break, and we will come back with a new show, with a new game.